Hi and welcome to this video. I hope by the end of this video you'll understand and be able to design web pages using the Bootstrap grid system. Bootstrap is a collection of JavaScript and CSS libraries which are totally free for anyone to use. To start using Bootstrap in your site, you just simply add the link tags to the top of your HTML document like you would for any CSS or JavaScript file. This video will be going over the code inside of Bootstrap, but first, before we do that, we're going to look at how the grid system is laid out. If we look at this graphic, we could imagine that this whole rectangle, this whole blue rectangle, is the web page. So on this web page we have each row going along the page, and we have 5 rows in this example. Each row has its own number of columns, so the bottom row has 1 column, and the top row has 12 columns. Eventually you can start going on to do more complex grids using embedding techniques and other strange techniques, but that would be for another video. So each column is its own div with the class name col.md, then a number. The number will change depending on how many columns you have in that row. And the only real rule is that the row must add up to 12. So the top row, you can see there's 12 columns of the number 1. Adds up to 12, bottom row, number 12 straight up, and then yeah, all these rows add up to 12, so that's the main requirement. One last thing to mention is there is always a container that goes around the whole grid. This container just needs to be a div on its own, no special class needed. I just want to mention one more thing about the column class before we get to the coding. There are actually 4 classes you can use: column XS, column SM, column MD, and column LG. They each have a slightly different behaviour, which are meant for specific screen sizes. So if your site is being designed for mobile phones, you'd probably use the XS. For if you're designing for tablets, you'd use SD. For normal desktop, you'd use MD. For large desktop, you'd use LD. But yeah, I'll leave that to you to experiment with. In this video we'll just stick with the MD for the standard desktop. So by now you should know that the Bootstrap grid is made out of rows and columns. You know that every row must add up to 12 columns, and that the MD stands for medium device. So we start off with the container. So this is just a div class called container. And then we've got our rows. So again, these are just div classes, but these have got the class row. And then here we've got the columns that have been put in, and they've actually been blanked out on this example. But the top row, the column could be col.md12. The second row could have col.md4 for every column, so it adds up to 12. But I think next we should go take a look at a live demonstration. Okay, so let's look at this example. I want to first say that I apologise for the lack of design in this website, but it does the job for us, because what you're looking at right now is just a grid system. So there's 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4. These 3 rows here all have 2 columns, and this row has 4 columns. So let's look at the code. So this div here is our grid container, and this stretches down to here, and this container goes around the outside of all these elements. And then you've got a row here, you've got another row here. Let's just clean this up. There's another row there, and another row there. And then within each row you've got your column divs. And then within those column divs you've got the content for that cell, or whatever you want to call it. So remember, one of the main rules is to make sure the columns add up to 12. So 4, 6, 9, 12. Yep. Next row, 8, 4 goes up to 12, and yeah, that's basically what it looks like in the code. You can see that for yourself. And so the other thing to remember with Bootstrap is when you make the screen smaller, changes. So these two are actually on the same row. Pretty cool.